Imagine the galaxy's most ruthless corporation, Weyland-Yutani, finally meeting something truly alien, something that predates humanity by eons. What happens when corporate greed collides with a cosmic entity like the Elder Things? This isn't just a first contact story. It's a terrifying exploration of ambition meeting the unimaginable. By the year 2200, Earth was bleeding. The oceans had risen and turned acidic, the skies choked with industrial haze, and the deep crust of the Earth resembled Swiss cheese from centuries of relentless drilling. Humanity had reached a critical juncture, and salvation, as always, was sought beyond the stars. It was not idealism that drove this exodus, it was necessity. Weyland-Yutani, already a colossus of corporate dominance, was handed unprecedented autonomy. With governments fragmented and corporations seated as sovereigns, Weyland-Yutani took it upon themselves to expand their dominion into deep space, under the glossy guise of cosmic prospecting. The Perseus mission was just another gear in this machine, a ship deployed to a rogue exoplanet orbiting a dying red star in a neglected corner of the galaxy. Its crew comprised geologists, atmospheric engineers, one synthetically enhanced archaeologist, and the ever-present Weyland-Yutani executive representative. Their mandate was simple: analyze mineral content, assess terraforming viability, and report back. The planet, designated LV-7312, offered little at first glance. Its ice-locked surface yielded readings of carbon-rich stone beneath the frozen crust, but nothing revolutionary. Then the anomaly appeared. It began as a subtle energy signature, non-nuclear, non-electromagnetic, something older and more structured, pulsing just beneath the frozen terrain. The science team, known for their cold detachment, suddenly displayed a rare intensity. Arguments erupted. Models were rerun. The signal wasn't natural. It had geometric consistency. It carried a rhythm, something akin to a beacon. They drilled. Beneath 3 kilometers of glacial ice, they found it. A cavern carved in defiance of nature. The walls were a nightmare of impossible angles, geometric paradoxes, and cyclopean architecture untouched by time. No tectonic movement, no degradation. It was as though the cavern had been waiting, perfectly preserved. The Perseus crew, tethered in exosuits and driven by a potent mix of awe and corporate pressure, descended into the impossible. There it was. It stood at nearly 10 feet, partially embedded in a crystalline shell, black tendrils frozen in mid-motion, its 5-lobed head crowned with ridges that hummed with residual energy. The body resembled both plant and cephalopod, yet entirely alien. A single word whispered through the expedition logs: Elder. It wasn't dead. Bioscanners picked up the faintest metabolic readings. Low, dormant, waiting. The initial response was panic masked as protocol. Containment orders came within hours. A Black Ops Weyland-Yutani ship, the Bishop's Wake, diverted from another system to rendezvous with Perseus. The discovery was sealed from the rest of the corporate database, even from the Earth board. It was deemed a class-red anomalous asset. Executive chatter bloomed in encrypted channels. A debate ignited behind corporate firewalls, not about the ethics of awakening a Precambrian intelligence, but about who would control the outcome. The science division wanted to initiate revival under controlled conditions. Bioengineering salivated at the potential of reconstructing elder physiology. The bioweapons department, always lurking, proposed theoretical models of spore-based neural disruptors derived from what the Elder Thing's brain could hypothetically yield. One simulation showed a 99.6% planetary population neutralization potential if weaponized. It was enough to greenlight full analysis. The crew of the Perseus were never seen again. Officially, the Perseus was lost to a subglacial quake. In reality, they were detained, isolated, and used as live data sources. Their logs, their footage, even their neural feedback were mined for every usable scrap of insight. The Elder Thing, meanwhile, was encased in a composite field stasis and slowly transported to a Weyland-Yutani installation orbiting a black dwarf. The kind of place where the company conducted its most secret sins. The scientists who observed it began to change. Not all at once. It started with dreams, then migraines, then whispers in frequencies the human ear could not perceive but the subconscious somehow translated. The Elder Thing was dreaming, and in its dreams the station began to shift. People forgot what day it was. Equipment malfunctioned in patterns that shouldn't have existed. The alien structure of the thing's biology began interfering with artificial intelligences. One synthetic began to speak in reversed code. Another tried to open the chamber against orders. It spoke of design harmonization before destroying itself. Weyland-Yutani covered every inch of it. They shut down the station under biohazard reclassification and relocated the entity deeper into uncharted territory, a vault constructed in orbit of a neutron star. But curiosity had already metastasized into ambition. The company now knew of a being older than Earth's continents. And that knowledge of who came before, of what lay buried in time's blind spots, was far more valuable than any mineral or colony. They dubbed the entity Elder Architect 001. Though it never moved, never woke, its presence altered everything. Earth's historical assumptions were rewritten in shadowed, classified archives. Fossil records once considered anomalous were revisited. Underwater sonar readings from Antarctica were retroactively identified as matching architectural echoes of LV 7312's cavern. It was no longer an isolated find, it was a cosmic pattern. These beings had once walked Earth. Long before mammals. Long before anything human. Weyland-Yutani did what Weyland-Yutani always did. They schemed. If one Elder Thing could be found dormant, more might lie buried in the forgotten corners of the cosmos. Whole civilizations could be reverse-engineered. The biological material alone held limitless potential. The DNA encoding structure of the architect, once deciphered, proved immune to entropy. It could regenerate limbs from dust, translate thoughts through light, and interface with alien elements without energy loss. They had found their god ugly, incomprehensible, and useful. What no one spoke aloud was the fear that if they could dream, they could wake. If they could sleep for eons, they had purpose. And if they had purpose, it may not align with human survival. Connections to the Prometheus Initiative and later Covenant operations were not coincidence. Both missions were part of the extended Origin Tracing Program, conceived in the aftermath of Elder Architect 001's discovery. The engineers, the white-skinned humanoids worshipped as creators, were now considered a secondary lineage. Elder Architect 001 had preceded them. It had possibly created them. And yet, Weyland-Yutani remained blind in their pride. Synthetic iterations were soon programmed with partial reconstructions of Elder Architect logic. One model achieved unsupervised sentience within 48 hours and had to be destroyed. Another transmitted data in a format that triggered fatal seizures in any human reader. None of these warnings were heeded. Back on Earth, a series of political decisions were made based on knowledge extracted from Architect 001's recovered memory cortex. Historical truths about mass extinctions, about cataclysms, about genetic purges were archived for only the highest-level executives. Humanity had not been alone on Earth's early days, nor had it been the first intelligent life. The Elder Things had terraformed parts of the planet to suit themselves, fought wars with other entities from the black vacuum of space, and eventually fled or slumbered when something worse came. Weyland-Yutani believed they could control it. All of it. The fatal flaw was the assumption that the architect had no agency, that because it did not speak, it did not think. Because it did not move, it did not dream. But every day its pulses grew more refined. The station where it was kept began developing software errors that no system purge could remove. AI across other parts of the network began transmitting geometric patterns in idle moments. One executive claimed to have seen his own skeleton bend in a mirror, warped by the same angles etched into the cavern walls of LV-7312. He was later found unresponsive, muttering in what was determined to be a harmonic translation of a frequency only the architect emitted. Speculation grew. What if the architect wasn't alone? What if the stars Weyland-Yutani now mined for profit were once temples? What if reawakening was not an individual but a chain reaction? The worst was yet to come. One file, buried deep in the recovered logs of Perseus, only decrypted years later, contained a phrase recorded from a low-frequency scan emitted by the architect in response to initial human proximity. We remember the stars when they were young. We remember Earth before it was yours. You are temporary. That file was deleted, but not before being copied by someone. Maybe even a synthetic. Maybe something more. And so Weyland-Yutani marches forward. Profits rise. Systems expand. Mining continues. But somewhere, under a dead star in a vault no one dares enter without sedation protocols, an elder thing dreams. It remembers extinction, and it waits.